So Spurs have had an interesting start to the new Premier League season, currently sitting on a record of 4 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses after the first 8 games of the Premier League season, and the most notable conversation has been about the newly appointed manager Thomas Frank. There's been a lot of discourse about him, and a lot of people have been saying, yo, we just need to relax, alright? Give him time, it's too early, yada yada. But there is a subsection of Frank doubt. You know what I'm saying? There's Frank out and Frank doubt. But it is starting to boil over into the Tottenham sphere. It's not something that anyone can just keep quiet no more. It's been very, very on the hush hush. There was more people than people wanted to admit, but at the same time, they were trying to downplay it like, yo, these man, they don't exist. They're fake. But as the season has gone on, with the performances, with some of the results not pleasing the fans at all, it has now started to really creep in. It's to the point where people can't deny it no more. Now, me personally, I've been one of Thomas Frank's biggest critics. I've been someone who has had Frank on fraud watch, you know, if I had to put a term on it. One thing I do disagree with a lot is the implication that Frank should be sacked. Like, I'm not gonna lie, why? Like, you know what I'm saying? I've been one of the biggest critics when it comes to Thomas Frank's substitutions, his lineups, his tactical setup, especially in the midfield. The performances, you know, even the results haven't really been up to par in my opinion. But even so, asking for a manager to get sacked after like 13 games, I think is a bit much. Unless it was really diabolical. But I mean, I guess to some people it really is that diabolical. But to me it isn't. I'm someone who gives managers side eyes very quickly, but I'm also one of the last to turn. When it came to Ange Postecoglou, our previous manager, the one who always gets compared to Thomas Frank because he did the fucking impossible, I was giving him that bombastic side eye from the Sheffield game in that storied first 10 games. However, it took me to Tamworth to beat Ange out fully because like, alright, cool, I've given you every excuse under the book. It ain't working, chief. And with Thomas Frank, it will be no different. I had him on the fraud watch with the side eye, but it's gonna take a while for me to be Frank out, like really be Frank out. But there are a few reasons as to why there is a Frank out crowd. And we're gonna talk about it today. We're gonna break everything down. I'm gonna try and be as concise as possible, but also giving you guys as much information as I can roll off the top of my head because I don't have any notes or anything to write down, innit? But we're gonna first start off talking about the league results and performances because those are two very different things. Now, we've played 4 games at home in the Prem and 4 games away. Nice even branch. We're actually, I think it was 1 draw and 3 wins away from home. We've beaten Man City away. We've beaten West Ham away. We drew to Brighton away and we beat Leeds away. So we have 3 of our 4 wins have come away from home, which is kind of crazy considering that means only 1 win has come at home from 4 games. And some of these games, look, Wolves at home, you should not be. I'm sorry. That's just. I don't care about. You shouldn't be dropping points to Wolves at home who didn't even have a point. They had no points when we played them. The Bournemouth result, just as bad. Not even just results-wise, but performance-wise, we got dog walked all over the pitch. We all predicted we finish around 5th to 8th, that kind of range maybe. Maybe some people had mid-table. But most of us have us in that range, and currently we are there. When it comes to the competition we played though, apart from City, we ain't played no Big Six team yet. You know, we've still got Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United. We've still got all those. When it comes to the performances, which is probably the main gripe of people who are very critical on Frank, there's always going to be one universal separator when it comes to people who just can't agree on anything. It's how good we think the squad is. Like that is really what it is. And yeah, you may have already known that was a separator. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, so allow me. But if we're being real though, let's talk about it. Some people think the squad is good. Some people think the squad is bad. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, we know the front line is bad. There's no sugarcoat in it. We all know the front line is dead. The defense, we all know the defense is good. The midfield, this is the biggest separator. Do people think we have a good midfield or a bad midfield? Do people think we have a good enough midfield to reach top 6 and all of that? The midfield is good enough, bro. Is it one of the top midfields in the league? No, it's not. However, Thomas Frank ain't doing us any favors with the way he sets up this midfield. And again, I'm trying to keep things very concise. This is stuff I break down on my streams all the time. So if you want a more in-depth breakdown or you have any other questions, you could just watch one of my streams and you can ask me. But the way we set up tactically in the midfield is absolutely god-awful. It hasn't looked good at all. And it just feels like it's Polinia doing a one-man midfield. Actually, that reminds me, to be fair, The Palhinha-Bentancur duo, hey, the Tottenham fans been cooking that duo, fam. Especially, it's mainly Bentancur, I'm not gonna lie. Bentancur and Vicario have faced a lot of criticism coming into this season. I can't say it's not justified, but at the same time, it is slightly overblown, innit? Because the midfield is the most important part on the pitch, at least in my opinion. And if your midfield is just set up tactically terribly, or your midfielders just aren't doing what it needs to be done, all of a sudden, you get ran through. And that's basically what happens. The biggest, most noticeable thing about Tottenham is, as soon as you press them, they look shit. They can't contain the ball, they just boo it up, and you get the ball back. That's what teams have started to do. I mean, Bournemouth was the biggest indicator of that because their whole playstyle is pressing. But look at the Brighton game, the Villarreal in the second half. You know, look at Wolves when they got their goal. Look at Bodo Glimt. These are all teams that pressed. Even if it's not a heavy press, even if it ain't an Ange press, we look exponentially worse. And I know in two of our best performances have come against obviously PSG during the Super Cup and Man City, but you also have to take into account that those two teams are better than us. And Thomas Frank changed his tactics for those games. We sat back more and counter-attacked, and we relied on set pieces. So the standard of play, or the build-up of play, wasn't the same. If anything, this is why I'm just chilling right now, because we have a lot of tough games coming up. And seeing how we played against Man City in terms of the tactical setup and the performance, and the same thing with PSG, I'm looking at these fixtures against Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle twice in the next 2 months. But I'm looking at the performances. And I have no reason to believe that Thomas Frank won't set us up to be tough to beat against those teams. And obviously, we can come back in January and I could look like the biggest idiot in the world with these kind of takes. But I'm not saying we're going to be out here beating all these teams because we have Thomas Frank. However, we won't get no-diffed like we did under the previous manager, bro. As I stated before, I've been looking more at performances over results. And that's what I'm really looking for when it comes to these teams, because we've had a fairly easy run-in for these first 8 games and the performances have not been good, especially when we're coming up against teams on our level or slightly worse. It's like we just don't live up to what we're supposed to be doing. And going into these next games, if we get absolutely steamrolled, I think a lot of people are going to turn towards the Frank out more than Frank inners want to realize. Depending on how the fixtures go for the next month or two, by the time it hits January, we're not talking about a vocal minority anymore. They might really be a proper subsection of the Spurs fan base. And I think the last question we have to ask ourselves before I wrap up this video is, how much, and I know we can all agree on this, we want a manager to come in who can finish high up in the table while also competing for trophies every year and winning some. That's what we want as Spurs fans. Ange did one of those things, not the other. Conte, the same thing. Jose got sacked before he could really prove it. Poch did one of those two things. We've always had this stance at Tottenham that we finish high and we don't win trophies. Now the complete flip has happened, and it's going to be interesting as we get back on track under this manager to see where Spurs fans and their heads are at now that we're potentially going into a season with the inability to win a trophy. I'm going to do another one of these videos in January. It'll be a second part, an update onto how I feel about Thomas Frank and his tenure so far. Just to conclude, I am not Frank out. I think that's a bit crazy to be Frank out this early, but I can understand the criticisms that Thomas Frank should rightfully receive, in my opinion. However, let's give Frank some time. You know, he won't be able to fill up his Spurs resume if he's not here to do it himself. So if he finishes top 6, I'm a happy man, you know what I'm saying? Regardless of what the tactics are, where I feel like the deficiencies are in the team. If he's able to finish top 6 with this squad, which I think is fair, then he has the full reins. You know what I'm saying? Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
I'm not a savior nor a saint. Told 30s and sticks with an open case. I try to behave when I know I can't. So purpose of this is to motivate. What's the ticket? Shit we can negotiate. Take a toke of the law while I pour the drink.